Every day, the world gives us headlines. But headlines are not history. Headlines are fragments. They tell us what happened, but rarely what it means. Today's subject is real. The machines are real. The investment is real. The data centers are real. The pressure on workers, schools, governments, soldiers, companies, and ordinary families is real. Artificial intelligence is no longer a distant theory. It is entering the office, the battlefield, the classroom, the market, the hospital, the election, and the private life of the citizen. This video is not fiction. It is not an invented speech. It is not the voice of Churchill returned from the grave. It is a modern geopolitical essay written through a Churchillian lens. A lens of war, money, courage, weakness, empire, technology, truth, and power. So before we celebrate the machine, we must understand the bargain. And before we understand the bargain, we must ask the only question that truly matters. What does humanity sacrifice when it teaches machines to think faster than people can judge? Artificial intelligence did not arrive as an army arrives, with banners, uniforms, and thunder on the road. It arrived quietly. It arrived through a search box, through an office document, through a school assignment, through a customer service window that no longer had a human being behind it, through a phone that could finish a sentence before the citizen had formed the thought, through an image generator, a coding assistant, a medical summary, a financial model, a voice that sounded almost human, and a machine that could answer with confidence even when it did not truly understand. That is how revolutions often begin. Not with a declaration, but with convenience. At first, the public saw artificial intelligence as a curiosity. A clever machine that could write an essay, produce a picture, summarize a document, imitate a style, or answer questions in seconds. It appeared almost playful, a novelty, a toy for students, marketers, programmers, and people who wished to save time. But behind the friendly window was something far more serious, a new industrial layer being built beneath civilization. The first mistake is to think of AI as merely another application. It is not only an app. It is not only a chatbot. It is not only software. It is a system of power resting on chips, energy, data, cloud infrastructure, capital, talent, law, and national ambition. It is a machine built not only to calculate, but to mediate. It stands between the citizen and information, between the worker and the employer, between the student and the page, between the patient and the record, between the voter and the image, between the commander and the battlefield. And once a machine stands between human beings and reality, it is no longer merely a tool. It becomes a gate. This is why artificial intelligence became a global force so quickly. It did not need to build a new civilization from nothing. It entered one already prepared for it. The modern world was already digital. The records were already stored, the people were already online, the offices were already connected, the markets were already automated, the children were already learning through screens, the companies were already measuring behavior, the governments were already collecting data. The citizen had already accepted the phone as a companion, the platform as a public square, the algorithm as a guide, and the notification as a command. Artificial intelligence did not conquer this world. It inherited it. The rise of generative AI made that inheritance visible. Earlier forms of AI had already been working in the background for years. They recommended videos, ranked search results, detected fraud, helped translate languages, optimized advertising, filtered spam, and guided logistics. Most citizens did not call this artificial intelligence. They called it the internet. They called it convenience. They called it normal life. Then came the large language model, and suddenly the machine appeared to speak. It could produce paragraphs, arguments, summaries, code, plans, poems, scripts, emails, lessons, legal drafts, medical explanations, financial commentary, and political slogans. It could respond in a voice that seemed patient, educated, tireless, and fluent. It could compress 1,000 pages into a minute. It could write in the tone of a scholar, a salesman, a teacher, a friend, or a bureaucrat. It could become a mirror for almost any human intention. And this was the turning point. A machine that counts is powerful. A machine that speaks is intimate. A machine that predicts is useful. A machine that persuades is political. The world noticed. According to Stanford's AI Index 2025, generative AI attracted tens of billions of dollars in private investment, with strong momentum continuing after the first great public shock of the technology. Business adoption also accelerated, not because every company had fully mastered AI, and not because every promised transformation had already become profitable, but because executives understood that ignoring AI could become a strategic risk. In boardrooms, the question changed from "what is this?" to "what happens if our competitors use it before we do?" That shift matters. When a technology becomes a competitive necessity, it no longer develops at the pace of wisdom. It develops at the pace of fear. Companies began to place AI into search engines, office software, design tools, coding environments, customer support systems, advertising platforms, financial analysis, legal review, medical administration, education products, and government services. Some of these uses are helpful, some are premature, some are efficient, some are dangerous if used without human oversight. But all of them reveal the same trend. Artificial intelligence is moving from the laboratory into the ordinary machinery of life. It is no longer hidden behind the curtain. It is becoming the curtain. A citizen may ask a machine to summarize the news. A student may ask it to explain a chapter instead of reading the chapter. A worker may ask it to write the report, answer the email, generate the slide, analyze the spreadsheet, draft the proposal, and prepare the meeting. A programmer may ask it to write code. A manager may ask it to evaluate performance. A hospital may use it to help process records. A bank may use it to detect patterns. A campaign may use it to target messages. A government may use it to improve services, examine risks, or strengthen surveillance. This does not mean the machine is always in command, but it does mean the machine is increasingly present at the point where decisions are prepared. That is the quiet revolution. In Churchill's century, power announced itself through factories, fleets, railways, oil, steel, radios, aircraft, radar stations, code-breaking rooms, and atomic laboratories. The statesmen who understood technology understood that invention was not neutral once it entered the struggle of nations. Radar was not merely a scientific achievement, it was an instrument of survival. Aviation was not merely transport, it was a new dimension of war. Radio was not merely communication, it was the voice of government, morale, propaganda, and national will. Code-breaking was not merely mathematics, it was a hidden front. A Churchillian mind looking at artificial intelligence today would likely not dismiss it as a gadget. He would recognize the pattern. He would see a new strategic instrument forming inside civilian life, commercial life, military life, and political life at the same time. He would ask who controls the machines. He would ask who controls the chips. He would ask who controls the electricity. He would ask who controls the data. He would ask who writes the rules. He would ask whether the people understand the power they are applauding. For the central fact of AI is not only intelligence, it is concentration. The most advanced systems require enormous quantities of capital, specialized chips, technical talent, cloud infrastructure, data pipelines, and energy. They require data centers, cooling systems, electricity contracts, supply chains, and access to the most advanced semiconductors. They require not only brilliant engineers, but industrial capacity. They require not only ideas, but power in the literal sense. power drawn from the grid. This is why artificial intelligence is also an energy story. The International Energy Agency has reported that data center electricity consumption is projected to grow sharply, with AI among the forces driving new demand. The machine that appears weightless on a screen is not weightless in the world. It is housed in buildings. It runs on chips. It consumes electricity. It needs cooling. It depends on grids, water systems, transmission lines, and power generation. It belongs not to the clouds, but to the earth. Every prompt has a physical shadow. This is one of the great illusions of the digital age. The citizen sees a clean interface. The world behind it is industrial. The citizen sees an answer. Behind the answer are minerals, factories, ships, servers, engineers, power plants, investors, regulators, and geopolitical competition. The citizen sees magic. The state sees infrastructure. The company sees market share. The military sees capability. The financier sees the next frontier of capital. The historian sees the old story. When a new instrument of power appears, men do not merely use it. They compete to command it. And so the world is not simply building smarter machines. It is building new centers of power. The nations and companies that control compute, data, chips, platforms, models, cloud infrastructure, and energy will not merely sell services. They will shape the conditions under which others think, work, learn, communicate, and compete. This is not speculation in the wild sense. It is the visible direction of the present. The United States has treated AI leadership as a strategic priority through national policy planning. Europe has answered with law, including the EU AI Act, which entered into force in 2024 and is scheduled to become fully applicable in 2026, with certain provisions applying earlier. Governments do not write such laws for toys. They write them for systems that can alter markets, rights, safety, competition, and public trust. Law is often the moment when a society admits that innovation has become power. The EU AI Act is not proof that every AI system is dangerous, nor is it proof that regulation will solve every problem. But it shows that governments now understand artificial intelligence as something larger than a product launch. They see risks around transparency, safety, discrimination, accountability, and human oversight. They see that systems making or supporting decisions about people cannot be treated in the same way as entertainment software. They see that when a machine influences hiring, education, credit, policing, healthcare, public services, and public speech, the question is no longer only what the machine can do. The question is what standards a free society demands before it allows the machine to do it. This is where the Churchillian lens becomes useful. Churchill was not a man who worshipped machinery for its own sake, nor was he a man who imagined that courage alone could defeat industrial power. He belonged to a century in which survival depended on both character and technology. He understood that a nation could not defend itself with speeches alone. It needed aircraft, ships, factories, intelligence, logistics, scientific research, and disciplined administration. But he also understood that machines without judgment could magnify disaster. A bomber could defend a nation or destroy a city. A radio could strengthen morale or poison the public mind. A code-breaking machine could shorten war, but secrecy could also separate government from the people. Industrial production could save freedom, but industry in the hands of tyranny could mechanize cruelty. The lesson is not that technology is evil. The lesson is that technology multiplies the character of those who command it. Artificial intelligence is now entering that same moral territory. It can help doctors see patterns. It can help scientists accelerate research. It can help small businesses write, design, translate, and compete. It can help disabled people access tools that were once closed to them. It can help teachers prepare lessons, citizens understand documents, engineers solve problems, and governments improve services. To deny these possibilities would be dishonest. But to celebrate only these possibilities would be childish. For every great instrument of power asks a price. Sometimes the price is money. Sometimes it is labor. Sometimes it is privacy. Sometimes it is attention. Sometimes it is truth. Sometimes it is the slow weakening of habits that a civilization only notices after they are gone. The first sacrifice is judgment. At the beginning, people ask machines to help them calculate. Then they ask machines to help them write. Then they ask machines to explain. Then they ask machines to recommend. Then they ask machines to filter what matters. Then they ask machines to remember what they themselves have forgotten. Then they ask machines to decide what should be done next. Each step is small. Each step seems reasonable. Each step saves time. But together, they create a new dependency. The danger is not that every person who uses AI becomes foolish. The danger is that institutions may begin to reorganize themselves around machine output before they fully understand machine limits. A model can sound certain while being wrong. It can produce fluent language without possessing human responsibility. It can summarize a dispute without moral courage. It can recommend a decision without bearing the consequences. It can imitate expertise without living under the discipline of truth. It can process more information than a person, but it does not suffer shame when it misleads. It does not resign. It does not apologize from conscience. It does not look into the face of the person harmed by its error. That burden remains human. And yet the temptation is immense. The modern world is tired. It is flooded with documents, messages, tasks, regulations, markets, dashboards, forms, videos, emails, and decisions. Every institution wants speed. Every company wants productivity. Every government wants efficiency. Every citizen wants relief from the pressure of too much information. AI arrives offering exactly what the age desires: compression, prediction, automation, and instant expression. It offers to make the world manageable. But the world is not only a problem to be managed, it is a reality to be judged. Here lies the deeper bargain. The more a society asks machines to reduce complexity, the more it may forget how to live with complexity. The more it asks machines to summarize, the less patience it may have for reading. The more it asks machines to choose, the less practiced it may become in choosing. The more it asks machines to speak, the less carefully it may guard the meaning of speech. There is nothing inevitable about this decline. It is not destiny. It is a risk. A disciplined society can use AI as an instrument and still preserve judgment. A serious school can use AI without surrendering education. A responsible company can use AI without pretending that accountability has been automated. A democratic government can use AI while keeping the citizen, the court, and the law above the system. But discipline is not automatic. It must be chosen. That is why the early age of AI is so important. Habits formed now may become institutions later. Tools adopted for convenience may become dependencies. Platforms used for assistance may become gatekeepers. Systems introduced as optional may become unavoidable. What begins as help can become infrastructure. And once a society builds its daily life around an infrastructure, withdrawing from it becomes difficult. The machine does not need to overthrow humanity to change humanity. It only needs to become useful enough that people stop imagining life without it. This is how power often works in modern civilization. Not by command, but by integration. Not by forcing the citizen to obey, but by making alternatives slower, harder, and more expensive. The question is not whether AI will suddenly take control in some theatrical manner. That is the language of fantasy. The more serious question is whether human beings will gradually hand over too many functions of thought, memory, decision, and trust, because doing so is easier than resisting. A Churchillian observer would not panic. Panic is not strategy, but neither would he sleepwalk. He would recognize that artificial intelligence has entered the arena of national power, commercial empire, public truth, and private habit. He would understand that the race is not only for better models, but for advantage. He would see that the nations with compute, energy, chips, talent, and trusted institutions may hold influence over those without them. He would see that the companies building the systems may become not only vendors, but architects of the future. And he would remind us that every age believes its machines are different. The telegraph promised speed. The radio promised unity. The airplane promised distance conquered. The computer promised calculation. The internet promised openness. The smartphone promised connection. Each promise was partly true. Each also carried consequences its first users did not fully understand. Artificial intelligence now promises intelligence on demand. That promise may transform medicine, science, education, productivity, creativity, and public administration. It may become one of the greatest tools humanity has ever built. But the greatness of a tool does not free humanity from the duty to govern it. On the contrary, the greater the tool, the greater the duty. For the central question is not whether the machine can speak. It can. The question is whether human beings will still know when to doubt it. The question is not whether the machine can answer. It can. The question is whether citizens will still have the patience to investigate. The question is not whether the machine can recommend. It can. The question is whether leaders will still have the courage to decide. The question is not whether the machine can remember. It can. The question is whether civilization will remember what memory is for. The world stands now at the beginning of a new settlement between man and machine. The terms are not yet fixed. The laws are still forming. The markets are still experimenting. The schools are still uncertain. The armies are watching. The companies are racing. The investors are pouring capital into infrastructure. The governments are speaking of leadership, safety, competition, and sovereignty. The citizen, meanwhile, often meets AI in the simplest possible form. A box on a screen that says, "Ask me anything." But history warns that the simplest invitation can conceal the largest transformation. Ask me anything may become let me decide. Let me decide may become trust me. And trust is the true currency of the AI age. Artificial intelligence is not asking humanity for permission. It is asking for trust. And trust, once surrendered too quickly, is difficult to recover. The first sacrifice of the artificial intelligence age is not a job. It is not privacy. It is not even truth. The first sacrifice is effort, for effort is the ancient price of judgment. A person who reads slowly learns not only information, but resistance. A person who writes painfully learns not only language, but thought. A person who searches, compares, doubts, fails, and begins again develops a faculty no machine can donate. The inner discipline to decide when an answer is not enough. Artificial intelligence arrives in a civilization already impatient with effort. It does not create that impatience from nothing. It finds it waiting. The modern citizen is already surrounded by speed, instant delivery, instant payment, instant messages, instant entertainment, instant outrage, instant opinion. Into this world comes a machine that promises instant thought. That promise is powerful. It is also dangerous. Not because assistance is shameful, not because tools are unworthy. Civilizations are built by tools. The plough, the compass, the printing press, the engine, the telephone, the computer, each enlarged human reach. A serious mind does not reject instruments. A Churchillian mind would not sneer at machinery. He would ask whether the instrument strengthens the human being or quietly replaces the habits that made human beings strong. That is the question before us now. Artificial intelligence can write the email, summarize the book, prepare the meeting, draft the contract, generate the lesson, answer the question, analyze the code, edit the image, create the advertisement, rank the applicant, and predict the customer. In many cases, it can do this quickly and impressively. In some cases, it can save hours. In others, it can prevent error. In many fields, it can become a genuine assistant. But every convenience alters the person who accepts it. The danger is not that people use AI. The danger is that people use it before they have built the human capacity it is meant to assist. A professional who has spent years learning a field may use AI as a lever. A student who has not yet learned how to think may use it as a substitute. A doctor may use it to organize information. A patient may use it to replace medical judgment. A lawyer may use it to accelerate research. An untrained person may use it to sound like an expert. A citizen may use it to understand the world, or to avoid the burden of understanding the world. The same tool can deepen intelligence or flatten it. This is the first great moral division of the AI age. For the prepared, AI may become amplification. For the unprepared, it may become dependency. And dependency is never neutral. The sacrifice of work will come first in the public mind, because work is where fear becomes measurable. People ask, will AI take my job? The honest answer is not simple. It will not take all jobs. It will not replace every worker. It will not produce one universal outcome across every country, industry, class, or generation. But it can change tasks, wages, bargaining power, training paths, hiring decisions, and the value of skills. A job is not one thing. It is a bundle of tasks. Some tasks are routine, some are creative, some are social, some require judgment, trust, physical presence, legal accountability, emotional intelligence, or responsibility under pressure. AI may automate parts of a job without eliminating the job itself. But that does not mean the worker is safe. If a machine can do 30% of a person's tasks, the employer may ask the person to do more. If a machine can produce a first draft, the value of the first draft declines. If a machine can answer customers, fewer entry-level workers may be hired to learn by answering customers. If a machine can code quickly, the question becomes not whether programmers disappear, but which programmers remain valuable. The threat is often not disappearance. It is compression, compressed wages, compressed training, compressed time, compressed patience, compressed dignity. The OECD has warned that a significant share of jobs in advanced economies are in occupations with high automation risk. Such figures should not be read as prophecy. They do not mean that every one of those jobs will vanish. They mean that large parts of the labour market may be exposed to systems capable of changing the nature of work. That is enough to matter. A society does not need total unemployment to experience disorder. It only needs millions of people to feel that their skills are aging faster than they can adapt. That feeling has political consequences. When people feel replaceable, they do not simply lose income. They lose status. They lose confidence in the bargain of society. They begin to suspect that the future is being built above them, without them, and possibly against them. They hear speeches about productivity while their own work becomes more monitored, more measured, more insecure, and more interchangeable. This is where artificial intelligence enters not only economics, but dignity. A worker can accept a machine that helps. It is harder to accept a machine that watches, ranks, predicts, schedules, measures, and judges without explanation. It is harder still when the decision comes from a system no ordinary person can question. Who was rejected? Who was promoted? Who was flagged as risky? Who was considered inefficient? Who was replaced by automation? Who decided? The manager, the software, the vendor, the model, the data, the policy no one has read. The citizen may discover that the most frightening bureaucracy is not the one with a cold face, but the one with no face at all. A Churchillian observer would recognize this danger. He lived in an age of vast administration, war planning, rationing, intelligence systems, military hierarchy, industrial mobilization. He would know that organization is necessary. He would also know that organization can crush the individual when power becomes impersonal. His warning would not be against efficiency. It would be against efficiency without accountability. For no free society can allow a man to be judged by a mechanism he cannot understand, corrected by a process he cannot appeal, or reduced to a score he cannot challenge. Then comes the sacrifice of patience. Artificial intelligence answers quickly. That is its glory, and perhaps its poison. The human mind was not built only to receive answers. It was built to struggle toward them. There is a difference between knowing the conclusion and possessing the road that leads to it. The road matters. The struggle matters. The slow reading matters. The failed attempt matters. The confusion before clarity matters. A generation trained to receive immediate explanation may become less tolerant of difficulty. That is not because young people are weak. It is because systems train behavior. A world that rewards instant completion will produce people who feel punished by slow understanding. Education faces this problem directly. AI can help students learn. It can explain a difficult concept in simple language. It can translate, quiz, summarize, tutor, and adapt. Used well, it may widen access to knowledge. But used poorly, it can become a magnificent machine for avoiding intellectual formation. A student who asks AI to explain a text after reading it may learn. A student who asks AI to replace reading may not. A student who asks AI to critique an essay may improve. A student who asks AI to write the essay may submit words without having wrestled with meaning. And if this becomes normal, schools will face a deeper crisis than cheating. They will face the possibility that the appearance of learning survives while the substance weakens. The old world had many injustices, but it understood one severe truth. The mind is formed by difficulty. Remove all difficulty too early, and you do not liberate the mind. You leave it untrained. Then comes the sacrifice of privacy. Artificial intelligence feeds on patterns. It learns from text, images, speech, behavior, records, clicks, prompts, searches, movements, preferences, mistakes, and desires. The exact data used by different systems varies, and responsible companies may place limits around certain kinds of information. But the broader direction of the AI economy is clear. The more machines are asked to personalize, predict, recommend, and assist, the more human life becomes data. The citizen asks a machine for help and may reveal more than he intended. A prompt can contain fear, ambition, illness, money, conflict, family problems, legal questions, political ideas, or private weakness. A company using AI may process internal documents, customer records, employee communications, and sensitive plans. A school may process student writing. A hospital may process medical records. A government may process citizen data. Each use may be justified. Each may be useful. But together they create a world in which the boundary between private thought and computational input becomes dangerously thin. The old diary had a lock. The new confession may have terms of service. A society may not notice this sacrifice because it is made in small pieces. One accepted policy, one uploaded document, one voice recording, one biometric check, one helpful assistant, one connected device, one model improving itself on human behavior. The citizen does not wake up one morning and surrender privacy. He trades it gradually for convenience and often discovers the price only after the bargain has been normalized. A Churchillian mind would not be naive about secrecy. In war, secrecy saves lives. Intelligence requires hidden work. But secrecy in the service of national survival is not the same as the quiet conversion of private life into permanent data. The free citizen must not become transparent to systems while the systems remain opaque to the citizen. Then comes the sacrifice of attention. AI does not merely produce answers, it produces content. Endless content. Articles, images, videos, voices, comments, summaries, advertisements, scripts, messages, replies, fake reviews, fake people, fake intimacy, fake urgency, fake authority. The world was already drowning in information before generative AI. Now the cost of producing plausible language and imagery falls towards zero. When the cost of speech collapses, the value of trust becomes fragile. The danger is not only that false things will be created, false things have always existed. The danger is scale. A rumor once needed a mouth. A pamphlet needed a printer. A broadcast needed a station. A modern synthetic campaign may need little more than data, targeting, automation, and a willingness to deceive. Deepfakes and synthetic media do not need to fool everyone. They only need to make enough people uncertain. In politics, uncertainty can be a weapon. If citizens cannot tell whether an image is real, whether a voice is authentic, whether a document is genuine, whether a video is evidence or fabrication, the public square begins to rot. Not because every citizen believes every lie, but because too many citizens stop believing that truth can be known at all. This is a subtle form of defeat. A democracy does not require that every citizen agree. It requires that disagreement take place within some shared respect for reality. When reality itself becomes negotiable, politics becomes theatre, outrage becomes currency, and manipulation becomes cheaper than persuasion. Here, the Churchillian lens becomes severe. Churchill understood propaganda. He understood morale. He understood that words could rally a nation or deceive it. He understood that truth in wartime was never simple, but he also understood that a people cut off from reality cannot remain free for long. AI-generated persuasion raises an old danger in a new form: the mechanization of influence. And influence is power over the soul before it becomes power over the state. Then comes the sacrifice of creativity. This must be said carefully because AI can genuinely help creative people. It can generate drafts, explore variations, translate ideas into forms, assist design, stimulate imagination, and reduce technical barriers. For a disciplined creator, AI may become a workshop, but for a careless culture, it may become a factory of sameness. The risk is not that machines create. The risk is that people begin to accept the average as sufficient, because the average is fast, polished, and cheap. AI systems often produce what is statistically familiar. They are powerful at recombination. They can imitate patterns, styles, tones, and structures. But great creativity often begins where patterns break. It requires taste, memory, pain, silence, contradiction, failure, and the courage to be misunderstood. A machine can generate style. It cannot pay the human cost of vision. If too many people outsource the first attempt, the rough sketch, the awkward sentence, the strange intuition, the unfinished thought, the culture may gain speed and lose depth. It may produce more images and fewer artists, more words and fewer voices, more music and less silence, more content and less meaning. That is not inevitable, but it is possible. And because it is possible, it deserves attention. Then comes the sacrifice of truth inside institutions. Companies want efficiency. Governments want capacity. Schools want tools. Hospitals want speed. Courts want organization. Newsrooms want productivity. But institutions are not only machines for producing outputs, they are systems of responsibility. When AI enters them, the essential question is not only whether it works. The question is who remains answerable when it fails. If an AI-assisted medical summary omits something important, who is responsible? If an AI hiring tool disadvantages a group of applicants, who explains the decision? If a police or security system flags the wrong person, who bears the burden? If a financial model recommends a risky action, who signs the judgment? If a school allows students to pass without thinking, who has been educated? If a government automates a service and the citizen is trapped in error, who hears the appeal? A civilization that cannot answer these questions has no right to automate them. The machine may assist. But responsibility cannot be delegated to a system without conscience. The final human signature must mean something. The human supervisor must not be a decoration placed beside a decision already made by the machine. Oversight must be real, informed, empowered, and accountable. Otherwise, human in the loop becomes only a comforting phrase. Then comes the sacrifice of resources. The public often imagines AI as invisible, but AI is physical. It requires data centers, servers, advanced chips, cooling, electricity, water, land, transmission lines, backup power, and supply chains. The International Energy Agency has reported that global electricity consumption from data centers may more than double by 2030, reaching around 945 terawatt-hours in its base case. That number is not destiny, but it is a warning. The digital cloud is becoming an industrial weather system over the real grid. This does not mean AI should not be built. It means the cost must be counted honestly. A society cannot speak of clean energy, climate pressure, grid constraints, industrial policy, and national security while pretending that AI infrastructure floats above all of them. If data centers compete with homes, factories, hospitals, or electrification for power, politics will enter the server room. If cooling systems strain water resources in certain regions, local communities will ask who benefits and who pays. If chips depend on fragile supply chains, governments will treat them as strategic assets. If only a few firms can afford the infrastructure, market power will concentrate. The machine that promised decentralization may, in practice, demand centralization. This leads to the sacrifice of equality. The largest AI systems require enormous capital. They require advanced chips that only a small number of companies can design, manufacture, or acquire at scale. They require cloud platforms, engineering teams, data access, legal capacity, and energy contracts. This does not mean small companies and individuals cannot benefit from AI. They can. But the commanding heights of the AI economy are expensive. The race favors those already rich in infrastructure. And when the commanding heights are expensive, power gathers. This is not new. Railways gathered power, oil gathered power, steel gathered power, radio networks gathered power, telecommunications gathered power. The internet promised openness, and yet enormous platforms emerged. AI may follow the same pattern, perhaps more intensely, because the cost of building frontier systems is so high and the value of controlling distribution is so great. The citizen may use AI for free or for a small monthly price and feel empowered. But behind that convenience may stand a small number of firms whose systems shape language, knowledge, commerce, advertising, labor, education, and public debate. The user sees a tool. The historian sees a platform. The statesman sees a private empire. A Churchillian mind would understand empire, but he would also understand that empire changes form. The empires of the future may not always begin with flags planted in foreign soil. They may begin with infrastructure no nation can easily replace. They may consist of cloud regions, chips, models, payment systems, app stores, identity systems, advertising networks, and data pipelines. Their power may be exercised not by governors in distant capitals, but by defaults, standards, APIs, terms of service, and invisible rankings. The language of empire becomes technical. The reality remains political. And yet, this cannot become a sermon against progress. That would be too easy and false. Artificial intelligence can be used for medicine, accessibility, science, logistics, education, translation, productivity, climate research, disaster response, and the discovery of patterns too complex for unaided minds. It can help a small business compete, a researcher accelerate work, a disabled person communicate, a teacher prepare better material, a doctor organize information, a citizen understand a confusing document. The question is not whether AI has value. It clearly does. The question is whether we are wise enough to receive value without surrendering command. For civilization is not protected by intelligence alone. A clever society can still become foolish. A productive society can still become unjust. A connected society can still become lonely. An informed society can still become misled. A wealthy society can still lose its soul in the pursuit of efficiency. Machines may improve the speed of human life. They cannot supply its purpose. They may improve the reach of human action. They cannot determine its morality. They may improve the accuracy of certain predictions. They cannot absolve human beings of responsibility for what is done with those predictions. This is the point a Churchillian voice would return to again and again. Tools are servants, not sovereigns. A free people may use machines, but they must not hide behind them. A leader may consult models, but must not pretend that the model has courage. A school may use AI, but must not abandon the formation of character. A company may automate tasks, but must not reduce workers to shadows of a dashboard. A government may modernize services, but must not let the citizen become a file processed by an unseen intelligence. The danger of AI is not only in the machine, it is in the temptation the machine offers. It tempts the tired manager to replace judgment with metrics. It tempts the anxious student to replace learning with completion. It tempts the politician to replace persuasion with manipulation. It tempts the citizen to replace investigation with summary. It tempts the company to replace responsibility with automation. It tempts the culture to replace originality with production. It tempts the state to replace trust with surveillance. And because these temptations are useful, they're more dangerous than open threats. No tyrant is required for a society to become less free. Sometimes it is enough for people to accept convenience without asking what habits are being weakened. Sometimes it's enough for institutions to adopt systems faster than they develop accountability. Sometimes it's enough for citizens to become so tired that they welcome anything that removes the burden of thought. This is why AI is not only a technological question, it is a test of civilization. Can people use intelligence without surrendering judgment? Can schools use assistance without destroying effort? Can companies use automation without humiliating labor? Can governments use data without erasing privacy? Can democracies survive a world where synthetic speech becomes cheaper than honest argument? Can markets reward innovation without creating new monopolies of knowledge? Can citizens remain free when the systems around them know more about them than they know about the systems? These are not questions for the distant future. They are questions of the present. Artificial intelligence has not yet fixed its final shape. The law is still forming. The market is still experimenting. The public is still learning. The harms are not uniform. The benefits are not imaginary. The future is not written. But the direction is serious enough that no responsible society can afford innocence. A Churchillian mind would not tell people to smash the machines. He would tell them to master themselves before they entrust themselves to machines. He would not reject speed. He would demand discipline. He would not reject power. He would demand responsibility. He would not reject innovation. He would demand courage equal to the instrument. For a machine can make a weak civilization faster. It cannot make it wise. It can make a distracted people more productive. It cannot make them attentive. It can make a fearful government more capable. It cannot make it just. It can make a shallow culture more fluent. It cannot make it profound. And so the second question of the AI age is not what the machine can do. It is what human beings will stop doing because the machine can do it for them. Will they stop reading? Will they stop remembering? Will they stop doubting? Will they stop learning? Will they stop listening? Will they stop taking responsibility? Will they stop asking whether a thing is true simply because it is convenient? The danger of artificial intelligence is not only that machines may become too intelligent, it is that human beings may become too willing to stop thinking. Artificial intelligence is not only entering the workplace, the classroom, the home, and the market. It is entering the struggle for power between nations. That is where the final meaning of this age begins. For every great technology eventually leaves the private room and enters the council chamber. It begins as invention, it becomes industry, then it becomes strategy, and at last it becomes part of the balance of power. Steel did this, oil did this, aviation did this, radio did this, nuclear science did this, computers did this, the internet did this. Artificial intelligence is now following the same road, but with unusual speed. The reason is simple. AI does not belong to one sector. It touches all sectors. It can influence military planning, intelligence analysis, cyber defense, logistics, finance, manufacturing, medicine, education, propaganda, surveillance, scientific research, and industrial productivity. It is not a single weapon. It is a force multiplier. A nation that uses AI well may move faster. It may discover patterns sooner. It may organize production more efficiently. It may defend networks more intelligently. It may simulate risks, train systems, translate intelligence, detect threats, accelerate research, and improve decision-making across vast institutions. A nation that falls behind may not simply lose market share, it may lose strategic time. And in geopolitics, time is often power. This is why the AI race cannot be understood as a normal business competition. It is also a contest over compute, chips, energy, cloud infrastructure, scientific talent, data, regulation, and trust. The countries and companies that command these foundations may command the future more quietly than old empires commanded territory. In the old age, empire meant land, ports, railways, colonies, fleets, and flags. In the new age, empire may mean platforms, standards, cloud regions, models, chips, identity systems, payment systems, app ecosystems, data pipelines, and private infrastructure so essential that governments themselves cannot easily function without it. This is not empire in the old uniform. It is empire in technical language. It does not always ask for allegiance. It asks for integration. It does not always seize territory. It becomes the environment through which others must operate. It does not always silence opponents. It ranks, filters, recommends, amplifies, and buries. It does not always command armies. It shapes the information space in which armies, markets, voters, workers, and governments make decisions. This is why a Churchillian mind would study artificial intelligence with severity. He would not look only at the speaking machine. He would look beneath it. He would ask where the chips are made. He would ask who controls the supply chain. He would ask which nation has the energy to run the data centers. He would ask which companies own the cloud. He would ask which governments can regulate without suffocating invention. He would ask which societies can innovate without abandoning liberty. Above all, he would ask whether free nations understand that convenience can become dependence. For dependence is the quiet route by which power changes hands. A state that cannot build or access advanced compute becomes dependent. A company that cannot reach frontier models becomes dependent. A university that cannot afford infrastructure becomes dependent. A small nation whose public services rely on foreign platforms becomes dependent. A citizen whose memory, writing, navigation, research, and judgment pass through systems he does not understand becomes dependent. Dependence does not always feel like weakness. At first it feels like service. The machine works. The platform is easy. The answer is fast. The cost seems low. The interface is clean. The old methods feel slow. Then, gradually, the alternative disappears. Skills fade. Institutions reorganize. Budgets shift. People forget how things were done before. And what was once optional becomes necessary. That is when convenience becomes power. In military affairs, artificial intelligence is already part of serious discussion. It matters for intelligence analysis, satellite imagery, cyber operations, logistics, drones, targeting support, autonomous systems, training simulations, and the management of complex information. This does not mean that future wars will be fought only by machines. War remains human in its causes, its suffering, its political purpose, and its moral responsibility. But AI may change the tempo of conflict. It may compress the time between detection and decision. It may increase the pressure on commanders. It may reward the side that can process information faster, coordinate systems better, and adapt more quickly. Here, the danger is not only that machines may act. The danger is that humans may be rushed. A commander who receives machine-generated recommendations in a crisis may have seconds to decide. A government under attack may depend on automated warnings. A military system may classify patterns faster than any human staff could review them. In such an environment, speed becomes seductive. But speed without judgment is not strength. It is a hazard dressed as efficiency. The gravest decisions must never be reduced to computational momentum. A free civilization must insist that human responsibility remain at the center of force. Machines may assist soldiers, analysts, doctors, engineers, and statesmen. But the moral burden of action cannot be transferred to silicon. No model can carry guilt. No algorithm can mourn. No automated system can answer before history for a decision of war and peace. If Churchill had seen such instruments in his own century, one may reasonably imagine he would have wanted them. Not because he worshipped machines, but because he understood survival. He would have wanted AI for codebreaking, intelligence sorting, logistics, aircraft production, convoy protection, language translation, radar analysis, industrial planning, and the anticipation of enemy movement. He would have seen its strategic value immediately, but he would also have understood the danger of a nation that lets instruments command its conscience. He would have known that the machine may sharpen the sword, but it must not decide the justice of the cause. This is the central moral distinction of the AI age. Artificial intelligence may improve capability. It cannot provide legitimacy. It may increase power. It cannot define honor. It may help a state defend itself. It can also help a state watch its citizens, manipulate opinion, automate repression, and hide decisions behind technical systems. The same instrument can serve liberty or control. That is why institutions matter, laws matter, courts matter, journalism matters, public debate matters, scientific honesty matters, civic courage matters, technical expertise matters, and trust matters most of all. Europe has responded to AI with the EU AI Act, which entered into force in 2024 and becomes fully applicable in 2026, with certain parts applying earlier. The United States has treated AI leadership as a strategic priority through national policy planning. Other governments are also trying to find their balance between innovation, security, competition, safety, and sovereignty. These efforts are imperfect. They will be contested. They may move too slowly in some areas and too quickly in others. But their existence reveals something important. The world's governments now understand that artificial intelligence is not simply a market event. It is a governance problem. The state has returned to the machine. For several decades, the digital world often grew faster than public authority. Platforms expanded, data accumulated, social life moved online, and governments struggled to understand systems that private firms built at global scale. AI intensifies this problem. The models may be private, but their effects are public. The infrastructure may be corporate, but its importance may be national. The data may be collected for services, but the patterns may shape society. The product may be sold as convenience, but the result may be power. This is the new tension. Private companies may become as important as governments in shaping the AI age. They build the models. They own the cloud. They hire the engineers. They buy the chips. They negotiate energy. They set default behaviors for billions of users. They decide which tools are released, restricted, priced, integrated, or discontinued. They may influence education, media, business, scientific research, software development, and public administration. In some cases, governments will regulate them. In other cases, governments will depend on them. Sometimes the same government may do both. This is not necessarily evil. Private enterprise has driven much of the innovation that makes modern life possible. But power does not become harmless because it is private. A corporation can shape society without holding office. A platform can influence speech without passing a law. An AI system can guide behavior without issuing a command. A default setting can become a policy no parliament debated. A Churchillian observer would recognize the old problem in a new form. Power must be answerable. The question is not whether companies should build. They should. The question is whether civilization will build institutions strong enough to govern what companies create. Then there is the contest between major powers. The United States, China, Europe, and other advanced economies are not competing merely for prestige. They are competing for the foundations of the next industrial order. Chips are no longer just components. They are strategic assets. Data centers are no longer just buildings. They are industrial fortresses of computation. Energy is no longer only a climate and cost issue. It is part of national AI capacity. Talent is not only labor, it is strategic capital. Regulation is not only law, it is a form of technological sovereignty. A nation may have brilliant researchers but insufficient compute. It may have energy but weak institutions. It may have companies but poor public trust. It may have regulation but too little innovation. It may have innovation but too little restraint. The future may belong not simply to the country with the largest model, but to the country that combines compute, energy, talent, capital, trusted institutions, and a public culture capable of using power without surrendering judgment. That final element is often forgotten. Trust is infrastructure too. A society that no longer trusts its elections, its courts, its schools, its media, its science, or its public servants will not be saved by artificial intelligence. It may be destabilized by it. Synthetic media, fake voices, generated images, automated persuasion, bot-like campaigns, and personalized propaganda can worsen a crisis of trust that already exists. They do not need to create distrust from nothing. They only need to deepen existing suspicion. This is perhaps the most serious political danger. Not that every person will believe every fake image. Not that every generated voice will deceive the public. The danger is that the citizen will become exhausted by uncertainty. If everything can be fake, then truth itself begins to feel like a partisan claim. If every recording can be questioned, evidence weakens. If every message can be automated, sincerity becomes harder to prove. If every public debate is flooded with synthetic noise, democratic attention becomes a battlefield. And democracy depends on attention. A free people must be able to hear, argue, examine, remember, and decide. They must have some shared confidence that reality exists beyond manipulation. They must be able to punish lies and reward honesty. They must be able to distinguish disagreement from fabrication. AI does not make this impossible, but it makes the defense of truth more urgent. Churchill's century knew propaganda. It knew censorship. It knew radio voices used for courage and for deception. It knew the power of morale. It knew that a nation could be beaten not only by armies, but by despair, confusion, and falsehood. If he looked at the AI age, he would not be surprised that words and images had become weapons. He would be surprised only by their speed, their scale, and their personalization. The old propagandists spoke to crowds. The new machine may speak to each person alone. That is a profound change. Mass persuasion was dangerous enough. Personalized persuasion may be more intimate. It can adapt to fear, anger, identity, loneliness, prejudice, hope, and resentment. It can test messages, learn responses, and refine influence. In commerce, this is called marketing. In politics, it can become manipulation. In hostile hands, it can become psychological warfare against the public mind. Again, this is not a prophecy that every election will be destroyed or every citizen deceived. It is a scenario that responsible societies must prepare for. The proper answer is not panic. It is resilience, transparency, media literacy, authentication systems, independent journalism, strong institutions, responsible platforms, legal accountability, and citizens trained not to surrender judgment to emotion or machine fluency. For the greatest defense against artificial persuasion is not another algorithm. It is a public that still values truth. And yet, the AI future contains hope. It would be dishonest to end only with warning. Artificial intelligence may help accelerate medical discovery. It may help researchers understand proteins, diseases, materials, climate systems, and complex data. It may help doctors with documentation and pattern recognition. It may help students receive tutoring where no tutor is available. It may help people with disabilities communicate, navigate, and create. It may help translate languages, reduce administrative burdens, improve logistics, optimize energy systems, detect fraud, support disaster response, and expand human capability. There is nothing noble about rejecting a tool that can heal, teach, build, or discover. The moral task is harder than rejection. It is command. Humanity must learn to command AI without worshipping it, use it without becoming dependent, regulate it without strangling invention, compete without losing conscience, and innovate without pretending that every new capability is automatically progress. Progress is not the same as speed. Power is not the same as wisdom. Automation is not the same as freedom. And intelligence is not the same as judgment. This is the final lesson. Artificial intelligence may become one of the greatest tools humanity has ever built. But no tool should become a master. No civilization should trade freedom for convenience without understanding the price. And no generation should allow the machine to become wiser in calculation than the citizen is in conscience. The future will not be decided only by laboratories. It will not be decided only by investors. It will not be decided only by governments, generals, engineers, or corporate boards. It will be decided by the habits of ordinary people as much as by the strategies of powerful institutions. When a student chooses whether to think or outsource, when a worker chooses whether to learn or merely comply, when a company chooses whether to automate responsibly or cheaply, when a government chooses whether to serve citizens or watch them, when a platform chooses whether to protect truth or monetize confusion, when a nation chooses whether to build power with restraint or chase dominance without conscience. These choices will shape the AI age. The machine is not outside history. It is now inside it. And because it is inside history, it will reflect the ambitions, fears, virtues, and weaknesses of those who build and use it. If we build AI in a culture of greed, it will magnify greed. If we build it in a culture of surveillance, it will magnify surveillance. If we build it in a culture of haste, it will magnify haste. If we build it in a culture that no longer respects truth, it will become an engine of falsehood. But if we build it with discipline, law, courage, responsibility, and moral seriousness, it may become an instrument worthy of human civilization. That is the choice. Not machine or no machine. Not future or past. Not innovation or fear. The choice is whether human beings will remain sovereign over the systems they create. A Churchillian statesman standing before this new industrial revolution would likely not ask us to tremble before the machine. He would ask us to stand upright before it. He would remind us that free peoples have faced powerful instruments before. They have faced engines of war, systems of propaganda, economic upheaval, scientific terror, and political pressure. They survived not by innocence, but by courage, discipline, and clarity. He would tell us that the machine may be formidable, but weakness before the machine is a human decision. He would warn that comfort can soften judgment. He would warn that speed can outrun wisdom. He would warn that empire can return wearing the mask of service. He would warn that a people who forget how to think will soon be told what to think. And then he would ask the question every generation must answer when power changes form. Will this instrument serve the freedom of man, or will man gradually arrange his life around the instrument? That question is now ours. Not tomorrow, not in some distant science fiction century. Now. In the office where AI writes the report. In the school where AI answers the assignment. In the campaign where AI shapes the message. In the data center, drawing power from the grid. In the military system, compressing time. In the company deciding who is necessary and who is not. In the government deciding how much of the citizen must become visible to the machine. In the home, where convenience becomes a bit. In the mind, where judgment either survives or sleeps. The future will not be decided only by the intelligence of machines, but by the character of the people who command them. If we build machines that think, but forget how to judge, if we automate speech, but abandon truth, if we multiply power, but lose responsibility, then the danger will not be that artificial intelligence became too human. The danger will be that humanity became too mechanical.